Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare video podcast, episode number 22. It's great to have you on and watching. We're going to chat a little bit about some things in the news, some news that we've been putting out there, as well as some interesting stories out there. There's been a sighting of a $19 airfare, and one of the things we're going to chat about is what you should know about those $19 airfares. We've also seen snacks or frills come back to airlines. We'll talk a little bit about that. And also we'll talk a little bit about spring break tip destinations. You're getting a little late in the game for spring break. And we'll also take a customer question here very shortly. So let me introduce our editor from the site at FareCompare.com, Ann McDermott. Hello, Ann.
Hello, Rick, and happy Groundhog's Day. I noticed that the always topical Spirit Airlines has just announced a Groundhog's Day sale, so that's something to be alert for.
Yes, if I didn't know how to remind myself for Groundhog's Day, I can at least always count on Spirit for that. Let's talk a little bit about some of these, and I think Spirit's probably one of the leaders in this, and that's in this super cheap, sort of $19 each way travel category. I see them all the time when I'm looking around. I see, just a handful of seats available at some of these ridiculously cheap prices, sometimes even coast to coast.
Well, Spirit, of course, used to be famous for their $9 deals. In fact, they kept the name for their club. You join a club and you get some extras and some slightly better fares. But these things, they do exist, right?
Yeah, they do, but you have to be a little bit careful. Well, most of the time, it's one-way pricing. Well, okay, if it's $19, it's $38. Oh, that's tough. You got some taxes and fees. Typically, that's included in that $19 in many cases. Just remember that includes that 7.5% fee on the fare. The one thing it doesn't include, especially on some of these ultra-low-cost airlines, is all the different add-on fees, and that includes carry-on fees, check bag fees. If you don't do them ahead of time, you pay a huge whopping premium if you do it at the airport. So just be careful about that. And in order to find them, that's the trick. You have to be flexible on where you're going and what days you're going. They're not on every day. They're not on every flight. So you got to be careful with that as well.
Well, and also some people get very disappointed, and you can't really blame them. They'll say it'll be $19 one way, but it will be a whole different, more
$300 round trip.
Yeah. However, I have personally found the $19 each way, like within an appropriate trip time, like 7 days. But sometimes you can find, say, a $19 fare in the middle of 1 month, and then a return flight at that same price isn't available till the next month, and that doesn't work
really
for most people.
Yeah. And also, I've noticed too that many times there's only one or two seats. So if you have a family of four, it's very tough to find a grouping of those $19 fares. Yeah. It's onesies and twosies.
But they do exist, and it strikes me that they're great if you're very flexible.
Not only that, they dominate the price-oriented listings. I mean, if you're searching for a route and there's one of these super cheapo fares, it catches your eye. It's almost instantaneously advertising that when you do see it. So, and I get to see them all the time. But if you do see that in there, just be aware. We see them from Frontier as well. I mean, periodically I'll see them from Allegiant, Spirit Airlines. American Airlines say they're going to start matching some of these crazy low fares. Yeah. Delta says they're doing it as well. That means some of these last-minute flyers are out there using those super cheap airfares and eating into the margins of the bigger airlines. So we'll see how that runs out. We saw Ben Baldanza at Spirit Airlines sort of leave abruptly. Maybe it's the new generation of Spirit. Hopefully this will last. I'm all for it. Let's go with 19. I'll even take $20 fares if you got them.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say is you pointed out that it's eye-catching. So you go to this airline site, you see this $19 deal. Well, they don't have exactly that you need, but you start looking around and you think, oh, these are great fares, and then you just stop there and buy. But you've got to compare.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it'd be tough to beat a $19 fare, but comparison shopping is important, especially if it's not on the day you want to go. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Again, another interesting story coming out the first part of the week is, well, I guess I'm not sure how American gets so much play for this because some of the other airlines already have snacks, but American Airlines jumps back in with the frills. The frills are back.
Yeah,
Remember
well,
when there was frill and no frill airlines, and then all the legacy airlines actually had less of the amenities than Southwest, which was supposedly the no frill airline, who doesn't have check bag fees, nor do they have a change fee. So we're back with snacks. Now, these aren't lower priced airfares. We are getting snacks. We were laughing this morning. And by the way, I have a little visual aid here that will be something somewhat like that. These were for my lunch, some pretzels. We were laughing about, I mean, I guess I'm old enough to remember the stories of them removing olives from salads to save weight on airplane. And it's not only did they save weight, it saved a few $1 million a year. So with airlines at $20 billion profit, they clearly have some money burning a hole in their pocket because we're
not
seeing
much burning the hole.
Well, I'd like to see it in adding maybe some capacity, keeping the planes not 99% full. That'd be great too. But I'll take the snacks as they come. Also announced are a variety of potential amenities like some free Wi-Fi, at least in some cases. We're talking even JetBlue is looking at redoing their cabins. 16. I didn't even realize when I read this story that JetBlue was 16 years old.
No, really.
Rejigging their airplanes, adding bigger screens at the cost of some legroom, I might mention as well. So, hey, look, I remember back in the days on Alaska Airlines where they gave out a gold ingot.
They did?
When you flew on them. That was in the 80s. So, and I remember the warm cookies of Midwest Airlines.
Oh,
and
those were good. They were good.
So, look, I mean, if the snacks are back, I'm cool. If they're going to actually have hot meals, apparently American's going to have it to Hawaii from their hub in Dallas. Probably going to have it coast to coast soon. I remember when that fateful day when Continental had the last coach meal, coast to coast. Now Continental, long been part of United Airlines, now is part of that merger. So, look, it was kind of fun to talk about this story today. I think one of the interesting things somebody brought up as we were chatting about it was the fact that what is it they're trying to address with these? I mean, clearly, with $20 billion in profits, you can go to Costco many times to find the huge bag of snacks there. And I think the issue here is, I think what they're trying to do is say, we're not nickeling and diming you anymore. Right, we're going to stop the nickeling and diming because I think that's one of the issues that a lot of people have with air travel these days. They feel like they're being nickeled and dimed. So maybe it's only pennied and nickeled now. So
well, I think one thing is you mentioned a bunch of perks of yesteryear. I think you've forgotten the most stellar perk of all. It was offered by Southwest back in 1973.
The booze patrol. Yeah.
A free bottle of booze.
Yeah, I've actually there's a great book called Hard Landing. I think it was written in the early '90s. Has some stories about some of the original Southwest flights, and having Herb Kelleher standing out in front of the plane with a placard, basically a poster board, and figuring out what yield management and seat selection was all about, and then finally offering up a few years later. And by the way, they drank plenty of booze in those days. You can be rest assured. Right after deregulation in 1968, it was flowing back then.
Well, I'm trying to think of a great segue from that into spring break.
You just can't do it. There's no better segue into spring break. I had got a lot of questions this morning when I was doing radio shows on the ABC radio network in some cities about spring break. I think one of the things I'll note about spring break is that the airlines have been building up these huge digital databases about basically their entire clientele. They can pretty much know everything about everybody, and they also know when every school district and every city is getting out for spring break. They know they're going to raise the fares on the weekends that bracket the spring break. So if you want a decent deal, what I like to call a better bad deal, going, for example, Tuesday, Saturday, which I've done many times in the past for spring break, is a great itinerary. Usually save about 20 to 25%. Destinations, I know a lot of people go to Disney during spring break, especially with the kids that are younger than high
Hmm.
school. Even high school age kids go as well. So you got your choice of coast. You can pick there as well. Your choice of dates. I know I've switched between going to Orlando and Anaheim a few different times, whichever one was cheaper for that particular spring break. So, and by the way, I'm kind of a Disney aficionado. At last count, somewhere between 12 and 13. We have a little debate on whether it was 13 or not, the unlucky number 13. Look, Ann, I think the interesting thing about spring break is there's so many interesting destinations. You also have the Zika virus out there that's causing people to sort of reevaluate what they're doing.
Yeah,
I just heard
yeah.
on the news last night they have some confirmed cases in Texas now. That's sort of on the horizon. I don't think it's like it was when we had the security concerns back on Mexico beaches about 4 or 5 years ago.
No, but you're right. There always is something, and whenever you hear about alerts, or if the CDC, which they are, is mentioning Zika, pay attention. But there's plenty of places to
Yeah.
go. There's plenty of places in the U.S. that are so popular we almost don't even have to mention them. But for international flights, if you want to really get away for spring break, there are a bunch of cheap, relatively cheap destinations that people
Yeah,
should investigate.
anytime you can get into Europe for under $900, that's a pretty good deal anywhere. We've seen several of those under 900, a few under 800.
Yeah, we've seen them under 500 with the
Yeah,
two
with the
big
Norwegian
discount
Air Shuttle
carriers.
stuff, and I guess
Yeah,
WOW's doing that as well.
yeah,
You have Iceland Air that also has some inexpensive stuff from time to time. If you're willing, if you happen to be in the right city for that, or if you want to actually sort of split your ticket and connect in. So there's lots of opportunities out there. Just pick the right days, pick the cheaper days. Look, if you have 4 or 5 people going, I mean, look and see if you can use your miles or points.
yeah,
If everything's over $450, you might look at using your miles and points. Just remember that it's getting a little tight now. You're a little bit late in the game shopping for
yeah.
spring break. Inventory goes pretty quick, especially at some of the destinations that are extremely popular. So get out there and quit procrastinating.
The only other thing I'd add is pack real light. But I mean, what do you need to pack for spring break? Come
It's
on.
a week, yeah. It's a party mug and a couple of bathing suits, right? So you're good to go. I say that because I had a friend one time that went to Cancun or somewhere, and all he had was what he had on plus a party mug with a bathing suit in it.
I love that.
So that was it. So if and I'm not positive. Hopefully the hotel had amenities and a toothbrush and stuff, but he was ready to roll.
We've got your favorite part of the podcast right
Ooh,
now,
cool.
customer
Customer
questions.
questions. Did I have a bunch of
Got,
those?
got two good ones. Virginia from Seattle, she is a big fan of FareCompare, a fan of
Great.
you personally, Rick.
Oh wow.
And she says she's sort of got a two-part question. She wants some guidelines about travel insurance because she wants something that covers everything from flight cancellations, delays,
Right.
baggage, and medical issues. Boy, I don't even know if such a thing is possible, but she says she's been reading some horror stories about medical issues that weren't covered. And she also talks about
Right.
how fees for insurance seem to have doubled.
This is
Yeah.
true. Yeah. No, I mean, I've researched this quite a bit many, many, many years. And sort of the rule of thumb for travel insurance is your ticket price has to be at a certain level that's extremely expensive. And that includes a hotel and all the rest of it. So once in a lifetime trips, if you feel uncomfortable about the fact and especially going to hurricane destinations in hurricane season, we saw, I guess it's almost 5 or 6 years ago, the Icelandic volcano issue that
Right.
basically clogged up traffic between Europe, and there was all sorts of issues with that about whether or not these insurance programs covered that kind of event. When you want to cover everything, and I think the one thing that you would separate out, which is if you want a form of insurance that says I can just get rid of all my stuff no matter what, that insurance
Mhm.
can be very expensive. So what I would call getting rid of your trip for convenience, that kind of insurance is in the 20-25% range. You have super simple insurance ranging down to the fare lock programs where you can lock your fare in for a week or two, if you're worried about where you're going, for example. But in this case, it sounds like she's worried about medical insurance. I've
Well,
seen there
she's
was a
going to be going to the Lake District in the UK and
yeah,
also in Iceland. And, she's just concerned.
right.
There's no medical problem, but what if she or someone in her family gets ill? She wants peace of mind. And
The first thing to do is contact your current insurance provider, whoever that is, whoever's providing it, and see what their benefits are that range when you're outside the country. In many cases, they will cover you almost on all things. I've added extra coverage if I've gone to a place where there wasn't potentially good doctors, where they would helicopter you out or fly you out if you had some sort of issue. For
oh,
example, it just depends on where you're going. I have never added insurance, and I've been to the UK in the over well, not to the UK specifically 40 times, but into Europe over 40 times. So I did check with our insurance carrier. They do cover everything across the EU, including the eastern parts of the European Union, which I was a little bit concerned about, since you never know where those things are. So check your policy. That's one. If your policy doesn't cover that, then they have lots of add-on policies out there that you can do. You have to read the fine print on all of them. I don't have a list of them sitting in front of me, but on the medical side, it's fairly expensive too, especially if you want the one where they fly you out, for example.
but I think that's probably the best advice. It's hard advice, but it's the best advice to read the fine print.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive. I've seen it range in price between 12 to 13% of your total trip price, all the way up to
Mm.
25 or 30%, depending on what you're trying to cover, right? And airlines have it when you buy your ticket. Some hotels offer it when you buy your hotel. Some will do the whole thing after the fact. And I think the main issue is, if you think if you're going to have some sort of medical emergency that prevents you from going on your trip, make sure that's covered. There's all sorts of delay insurance, baggage not making it there insurance. Airlines cover that as well. I can tell you what, and I've heard lots of horror stories about how this all plays out and how you get your money. So just be careful with all those different products. Tell you what, I think you and I will go back. We haven't addressed the insurance topic in a while. We'll get a new column out there for that, just so we can sort of update the ones from the past.
And the only thing I want to say about wondering about insurance for your bag, when I two European trips ago, our bags were lost for 2 days. There really wasn't much that could be done. This was human
Right.
error, and we had to make do without bags. I, bought toiletries, and I think I bought something to sleep in at night. Sometimes you just, work through it. You just
I
live with
had
it.
a friend that had an entire wedding party, including all the clothing related to that destination wedding, not show
Oh,
and
that's
actually
bad.
get completely lost forever, probably down there in Alabama where they have all the lost stuff.
Oh,
Um, and so, I'm not, as you well know, I'm not a huge fan of checking anything. So I like to keep it with me even if we're going for a couple weeks. So again, just be careful. Some of those things maybe you want to FedEx if they're very important. And that
that's a
doesn't mean
good
that
idea.
FedEx can't lose it, but usually you're in pretty good shape there. Probably a little bit better record there than they have in some others. So just be careful with those things. And look, I wish there was an easy answer to the question, but typically anything under $500 to $600 or $700 probably isn't worth your while to buy flight insurance.
Okay, the question from Max from Dallas. Max is a real fan too. He says, "Hi Rick, where have you been all my life?" He is wondering if you could confirm the best time to book a flight to St. Martin. He says he talks about that you mentioned between 2 and 5 months.
Yeah.
He's going to go in the beginning of October. That's his plan right now, and he just wants to know, should he wait? Should he wait?
Right, and the interesting thing is that I've been chatting about going there with my family recently. So you have to sort of discuss which version of St. Martin, the one
We can
with
all
two,
go together.
the one with two A's in it, or the one with an I in at the end.
This is the one with two A's, St. Martin.
Yeah, so both of them are not that easy to get to, right? So usually your jumping off point is either Puerto Rico or Miami, and sometimes you have to jump even again to get there. So it can be a little bit expensive on the expensive side in the 6 to 8K range. Now, it's not as popular some of them, so you don't see the price jump up. It usually stays very static. You want to start shopping for that ticket about typically international flights that are transoceanic about 5 months. Some of these Caribbean flights around 3.5 to 4 months. Domestic flights just under 3 months. 2.5 to 3 months beforehand. So he's got it right. He's spot on there. Right there at about the 3.5, 4 month mark, you want to start shopping there, and it greatly depends, right? The price can range from 450 on the low side to St. Martin, depending on off season. But if you're trying to go, for example, during Christmas time, many times during Thanksgiving and some of the colder weather time frames after December 15th, it can range up to over 1,000. I've seen it as high in coach up to 1,200 or so. So depending on when you want to go, it's very important. A lot of times they don't have everyday flights. Depending on what season you're going in, they do typically during the wintertime season where it's more high season. But if you're going in a sort of off-peak time or right at the edge of that wintertime, they only have a flight every other day or two. Just be careful with that too. Make sure you can get home. I know it can be difficult if they have a mechanical problem in St. Martin. It's hard to get home sometimes.
And we want to say thanks to Virginia and Max for giving us such good questions. We really appreciate it. And if anybody else would like to submit a question for Rick, please send it to customer.service@faircompare.com.
Yeah, no, love to get some more. Love to answer these questions. Many times I've actually been on exactly the route that the person's asking about. I'm a sort of a walking airfare computer. You can pretty much ask me anything. I see millions and millions of airfares rolled up each day. That's what we do here. We're a bunch of tech geeks messing around. Don't forget, by the way, Ann, to download our native app just on your phone, faircompare.com/app. It'll go to either the iOS store or the Android store. So you get
Eventurist.
It's called Eventurist. So you can type in FareCompare or type in Eventurist. I just noticed this morning a couple new events been loaded in there. Look for that also on our website soon. So we'll have that same content on the website as well.
Thank you.